welcome everyone. My name is Ebony Brown. I'm a partner at Rethink Education. We invest in ed tech across the education life cycle, and really excited here to talk to this panel of entrepreneurs focusing on the learning and earning space in Web3. So thinking about students being able to participate and earn rewards for what they're learning. 3 of the applications are in Web3. One is still a Web2 company, so it's going to be interesting to learn about the different perspectives. So kicking off the panel, I want you guys to kind of briefly introduce yourselves and talk about your background and what problem you're trying to solve and for what population.
Want me to start? Hi, everyone. Good afternoon. I am Sheila Marcelo. Most recent thing I did is I was the founder of a company called care.com. How many have used care.com? Some of you. Yeah. Thank you, Mr. Scott Healy, my colleague is there in the audience. Thank you, my buddy, for being here. Founded that company, ran it for 14 years, and then took it public. And then sold it to IAC in early 2020. My husband and I started investing in crypto. We'll talk about that in a little bit. And I didn't realize, though, that I would jump in as an operator until I saw a documentary about 6 months ago of a grandmother in the rural area of the Philippines, where I was born and raised. And she's 65 years old. Her name's Lola Vergi, rural area. She had downloaded a crypto wallet, purchased Ethereum, purchased NFTs, and she was playing a game called Axie Infinity with the help of a scholarship called YGG of a company. And she was making more money than the average wage locally in her town. She was buying groceries and medicine. Always something I was super passionate about at care.com is how to help the underserved. And so I took a step back and I said, wow, the consumer set in the mass market was ready for Web3. My husband and I had been investing in L1, blockchain, infrastructure, thinking that the technology was still early, but that consumer applications wasn't going to be ready. But the fact that a grandmother was already in the rural areas of the Philippines, the technology was ready. And so fast forward, November, I went to NFT New York, caught up with some friends, decided that we were going to launch a learn-to-earn company, funded it, called Proof of Learn in December. And now launching our very first project called Metacrafters, which is trying to solve the problem of bringing Web 2 to Web 3 developers, because there's not enough people building the metaverse. That's the first layer in terms of education. I'll talk more about it later. I want to turn it over to my other colleagues. And Ebony, thank you for having me here.
Absolutely. So my name is Eamonn Rahh. I'm born and raised from Compton, California. I'm best known for being a founding principal. I opened my own high school out here in Compton about 5 years ago. We yielded a 100% graduation rate, 0 suspensions, based off of enriched-based learning and incentivized education. Through that, I learned about financial literacy. I learned about teaching my students how to invest, and my eyes were open to crypto, but more importantly, the technology. The technology with blockchain could allow us to revolutionize the educational system. So that gave birth to me now becoming a startup ed tech founder as for K-12 Crypto. K-12 Crypto is the first learn-to-earn platform that allows students to earn cryptocurrency based off of the metrics that they meet in school. Why is this important? It's because now we can create self-directed pathways for kids to reimagine their learning experience, and they can fund their future. If you know anything about our current educational system, it operates like this. A kid coming from where I come from, they typically will have to borrow money when they graduate to then use that money to pay for college, to hopefully get a job to pay back what they borrowed, right? So for us, we believe learn to earn allows us a layer 2 to incentivize exploration. Similar to your Amex travel card, when you're going around getting all them points, right? We're going to incentivize them to learn and explore and become dream catchers. Because a lot of times in K-12 education, we have been crushing dreams. So we want to allow them to dream, and I'm that kid from Compton that lets you know that it's possible. Currently, we're doing a lot of great work with off-school grounds with a coalition of 150 principals and 40,000 kids that's ready to launch the platform. So thank you.
These two are so inspiring. Um, Hi, I'm Jamey. I'm a self-taught creative and creator, and I'm building a platform called Continuum, which is a social platform for learning. And our goal is to become a global vocational school for learning digital skills. So things like social media or design or maybe like writing tweets or anything that someone from my generation might want to do as a career. And I guess what inspired me and my co-founder to start Continuum really comes from our background as self-taught people. So I taught myself everything I know about design and being a freelancer and entrepreneur through social media, and we really want to tap into that ecosystem and give back. So learners on our platform are able to earn tokens for engaging in the ecosystem that we create through taking quizzes and engaging in discussions and other types of events.
Assi, I'm the CEO, co-founder of Prickly Bear. It's a learn-to-earn virtual currency designed for kids. We're on a mission to help kids level up their screen time. And what started me on this journey is the contrast between how important screens were for me growing up for my development and how frustrated I am as a parent today with my kids' screen time. I grew up with quite severe ADHD and schools were unpleasant. Computers were my friends and my parents were really supportive, so I always assumed I'll be a really cool, hip, supportive parent. And finding myself frustrated, I kind of went deeper. I have 4 kids, 11, 9, 7, and 7. All of them love screens and play really cool games, but they're not learning enough, and they're not developing healthy digital habits in the process. And at the same time, my kids are also super frustrated because they are in a free-to-play world where they either have to watch a ton of ads or they end up craving virtual currency. And so to bridge parents and kids' frustrations, we launched Bearbucks, which is the world's first learn-to-earn digital currency designed for kids.
Awesome, and we can stay down there on you, Assi. Although this space is fairly new, there's a number of applications of learn to earn, from exploring new products to enhancements of income. How do you define learning within your platform, and what is the desired educational outcome for users?
So when we think of our mission of leveling up kids' screen time, we break leveling up into 3 things. One is learning content. The second is developing skills, and last is forming habits. If I dive into one of them, so learning content, for kids to want to learn things, they need agency and they need things to be fun. And so we offer that. We launched in beta in the Play Store in the UK with 70 odd topics which cater to different kids' existing passions. So anything from evolution to Genghis Khan, and then the video question modality, which was our first, is we felt with kids that it's insufficient, so we now launched a game called Efficient. It's a game that teaches the intuition behind fractions to kids, and it's a game developed by Filament Games, which is our first partner in Prickly Discovery program, which allows EdTech to be discovered, and we've signed a bunch more. And then measuring learning outcomes on content is straightforward. The other parts that we're working towards, so developing skills, is focused mostly on how to become a better learner, developing learn-to-earn skills. So both the platform is designed in to support kind of cutting-edge things in the science of learning, so retrieval practice or diffused versus focused thinking, but also teaching these topics to the kids themselves.
Awesome. And same question for you, Jamey. How are you thinking about learning within Continuum?
Yeah, I would say the main focus for us is that everything on the platform is extremely actionable, which is why we decided to tap into a more like TikTok style and social way of learning, and tapping into how platforms like YouTube and TikTok and Instagram already have done so well for this ecosystem. Like I mentioned myself, like I'm sure many of you have heard of this, but like learning through like YouTube University. It's actually a really successful and great way to learn stuff. And I think from what I've seen personally with TikTok as well, because everything has to be like 1 minute. You really have to pack a lot of like actionable information, helpful information in there in order for that content to perform. So that's something we're focusing a lot on, is how can we, shorten the amount of time it takes someone to learn something. And also making sure that, again, back to that word actionable, like how can I go away from this piece of content and I can actually apply this skill. I think a lot of like course platforms, they boast like, oh my God, like 8 hours of content or whatever, which is really actually not what people want. They want to be able to, quickly, go on their phone, maybe spend like 15 minutes to an hour a day, casually consuming content, yet being able to improve their careers or their lives from it.
And decentralization moves from a few entities controlling the value of a transaction to all parties participating in the benefits. How is this applicable in the learn-to-earn space, and what's the impact of this paradigm shift? Shifting it to you, Eamonn.
All right. If it's okay, I would like to go back a little bit to around learning. I think it's important for us in any learn-to-earn model is that the evidence of learning is through application, right? So when we think about mastery and when we think about the digital currency and we think about Web3, it's around how we are now reimagining proof of learn through mastery-based learning, especially in K-12. So if we're thinking about standard-based learning and we're thinking about mastery, now we can have students learn and earn digital badges, digital NFTs that are now on-chain credentialing to show that they have actually applied. But now we take it to another level. What if we incentivize application? So we think about assessment, right? But that's one form of how we are getting students to apply their learning. And that's why we see the disparities. There are some students that can apply with that test, right? And there are some students that need performance-based ways to apply their learning. Well, now learn to earn is what if we incentivize that and students are able to earn on-chain credentials or badges that now become upskill work for the future employers to say that they learn on-chain that lives with them in their digital wallet. So this is where the intersection of now transactions come in, because transactions, when we talk about blockchain technology, allows for students to now migrate through different districts, because there's in under-resourced communities, there is high levels of students moving to different districts, different schools. And if you ever had that one kid that come to your school and they took some different course somewhere else and you're like, I don't know where to fit it in at, right? So now we are able to have something in an ecosystem for kids to be able to earn and learn, and now they have something on chain to credentialize or have a credential to say that they earned this, right? And it lives. And now they can continue on as a wallet, as a digital portfolio, as they go into college, as they go into a launch pad for their life. So I think that's where it's really important, is how are we getting students to apply their learning in different ways and earn different things that they find value in.
Can I build on that?
Yes.
So we actually did a podcast this morning, so we had a little bit of warm up. I am so impressed by Principal Eamonn Rahh, can I tell you, just a rock star. We're doing something similar in a sense that we're creating Web 2, attracting Web 2 competent developers into Web 3. Because right now there are estimated north of maybe 100,000 projects in crypto and blockchain. But interestingly enough, there's only estimated about 150,000 to 250,000 Web 3 developers. And you can imagine each project is going to take more than just one developer, right, if you did the math. So there is a huge lack of developers for this unbelievably growing industry. And so when we decided at Proof of Learn, even though our goal is to really be, the top leading educational platform in the metaverse, we took a step back and said, well, where can we make the best influence right now? To actually build out projects in the metaverse, we need more developers. And how do we train them? So we're working with the different protocols across the L1s, different languages, whether that's Solidity for Ethereum, Rust for Solana, you can go down the line. And we are turning that into curriculum for Web 2 developers from any country around the world to enter Web 3. And then, as Principal Eamonn Rahh is talking about here, is that we then, after they've finished a course completion, we reward them a proof of learn NFT that is credentialed forever in the blockchain. So unlike LinkedIn, you can go to LinkedIn, you can write our resume. We live in this country, and what rules LinkedIn? It's either fraud, certain cases, right? The cancel culture in this culture. But how do you ever know that someone actually completed or went to a school or completed a course? The beautiful thing about the software is that there is meritocracy and transparency now in the blockchain. to have completed a course. And so employers can see that. It becomes much more efficient. You disintermediate. That's my background at care.com. How do you create global marketplaces to disrupt and disintermediate so that you make it much more affordable for people? You remove a lot of the middle layer. And so when you remove the middle layer, you can open up value that you can then put in the pockets of the students, or what we call crafters, the developers. Because we can share the profit with them. And that is the power that really opened my eyes around Web3. The fact that at one point I said, well, why couldn't caregivers own more of care.com? Right? They're paid below minimum wage, and they make all work possible. They carry our economy and our society. And how about web developers in developing countries? They are paid a fraction of developers in developed economies, but they actually do a lot of coding and building for the world, for all the things that we enjoy, but they're not paid enough. So I just decided, you know what? Something is ready with this macro environment, and the technology is ready, and how do we really make education accessible to all? Which is, I'm so thrilled to be here speaking at a conference like this, and we launched NFTLA with Metacrafters. You can go later to the activation room at the marketplace, and you can go check out our trailer, our website. We're super excited to be changing learning modalities, and I think you're hearing from all of us. How do you make learning more engaging in this new world and for the next generation?
Eamonn and Sheila, I think you both kind of touched on this question a little. I'm going to turn it to Jamey to understand. Well, there just have been a lot of successful talent platforms and marketplaces in Web2, like care.com and others, and trying to better understand why you decided to launch this in Web3 versus Web2.
Yeah, I think particularly being in ed tech, it's interesting kind of flipping, who pays for education on its head. Because typically in America, you're almost punished for going to school. You have to go into like thousands of dollars of debt. But with a learn-to-earn model, you're actually rewarded for that and incentivized to better yourself in the community. And the way that we're doing it at Continuum is that we're using brands in the space. So our focus is creatives, people learning digital skills. So a brand like Adobe or Figma or Squarespace will actually pay Continuum to either sponsor, like facilitate content or events around their product. And then we in turn take those funds and funnel it back into the community through our token. So that's something I'm really excited about because it's truly like democratizing access to education because people are able to say, oh, I don't have to pay for this. I can take the time, maybe I take a day off of work or I can go part-time and, invest time learning on platforms like Continuum or Proof of Learn if they're a developer. And they're actually able to get paid or get some kind of value from that.
And I'm also curious, Assi, why for now have you decided to stay in Web2 for your platform?
So we're building for kids, 8 to 14, and it's a consumer product, so kids discover it themselves, and we are huge fans of Web3 and are considering playing with it in the future in some parts, but the current UX for an average 10-year-old without any kind of proper guidance and support is just not friendly enough. And to be honest, it can be built in Web2. A lot of the principles that exist in Web3 could be applied in a faster, simpler way in Web2. So at the moment, it's just for us a complicating factor both for the UX and to the development. So we're not in it.
Awesome. And just staying in the K-12 realm for right now, monetary incentives in K-12 aren't new. In 2008, Roland Fryer, Harvard economists, partnered with 5 school districts to pay students to learn. The report concluded that they found the most success when motivating students for inputs that they can control, like reading, homework, behavior, and attendance, versus paying students for grades and test outcomes without giving the roadmap to get there. Despite the success of the project, sentiments among educators and parents was polarizing, with some arguing that paying students to learn at a young age deteriorates intrinsic motivation in building a love for learning that they'll need later. What is your response to this argument? And we can start with Eamonn.
Yeah, I jump in since I'm big K-12. I think it's important. Learn to earn is not something that's revolutionary. Like learn to earn, we experienced this, right? Like there's learn to earn and CTE pathways for construction. There's learn to earn in different ways. Dr. Roland Fryer did a study with 38,000 students, and they did cash for grades. It showed the improvement. But you want to know the underlying problem is that in most schools, we incentivize compliance. We incentivize them trying to sit down, be quiet, and learn, and force feed them what we want them to learn. Essentially, we try to love kids the way we want to love kids instead of loving kids the way they need to be loved, right? So now we need to incentivize them, right? Right? So now, if we really looked at learn to earn and we think about this, now we're trying to incentivize exploration. And we're trying to now give them a way to fund their future. Why this is important is because most schools right now in this country, because they haven't dealt with trauma, they're trying to use everything in their wheelhouse to incentivize kids to be motivated to learn. They have all kind of token economies. They have class dojo bucks, they have token bucks, they got dolphin bucks, they got everything that they can think of to try to incentivize the kid. But what about relevance? What about the relational trust that kids have with what they want to learn? So now that comes with exposure, that comes with relationships, that comes with relevance, and then last, that comes with rigor, right? And rigor is the attention to detail for mastery. So once we align those things, and then we add on top the incentivized learning, so now they have a nest egg. I don't know about you guys, but kids that come from where I come from, they're trying to figure out how to survive, right? And it's hard. If you want to know the heart of a kid, put them in a position where they have to survive. But you will never know the potential of a kid until you put them in a position where they can thrive. So if we get them in positions where they can thrive with relationships, relevance, and rigor, then that means that you have unlocked the hidden treasure for every kid. And that's where we think Web3 could be something that's on-chain that allows us to really filter dollars to really equitable learning experiences for kids that are relevant.
Awesome.
Can I add?
Yeah.
Don't you love him? So in our podcast today, he was saying about this hidden treasure, and it's the same sort of psychology that we thought about. How do you harness the superpower in people? So we decided, what is it about when we taught computer science in the 60s and 70s in institutions around the country, here especially in the US, we jammed it into engineering because it was math-oriented. We jammed it into engineering. And what worked in liberal arts and university campuses is that there was a sense of community and belonging, right? Swim teams, fraternities, eating clubs, dorms. And so there was an attaboy, attagirl, mostly attaboy, get through the computer science class, right? And completion rates were higher in those institutions. And so, but yet it doesn't take 4 years to learn to code. And we all know that. So of course, the coding academies had to come into being. We needed more developers going through the system. But of course, the challenge is completion rates and how do you make it engaging? So when we started to study this, is what psychology works in IRL, in real life. I'm learning that from the kids, IRL, right? In real life, that you can mirror in the metaverse, but you can't fully copy it for this next generation. We had to think about psychology, behavioral things. And then I started to read about, and many of you are educators, the community of practice, the pedagogy that Lave and Wenge, and said years ago, eons ago, right, we heralded apprenticeship as a way and mentoring to learn. So we decided, let's do that in a game world. And of course, the pressure of screen time, the pressure and critique of, can you really teach a high quality curriculum with high completion rates in a game world? That's what we're out to prove. Our key KPI is completion rates in a game world. That's not going to be easy, but we're challenged to try and figure out, how do you engage these kids? How do they want to learn? Not how do we force them to think to learn in an assembly line fashion where they're memorizing and they're not applying. So if they're in a game world, and we're making the developer the hero in Metacrafters, it is the history of blockchain, they get excited about it. We're talking about chain magic. I mean, I'm not a gamer, and I'm up here thinking, how do we start to think about changing learning modalities to improve outcomes?
And maybe to build on these, I am a gamer, and GG on the use of internet acronyms. the way we think, we know Fryer's work, we know all the previous work that thinks rewards are evil. So if you look at self-determination theory, there's been a ton of studies on the risk of using rewards where kids are intrinsically motivated already. What we find when we look at kids' screen time is that none of them is intrinsically motivated to learn. So there's very, very little motivation to harm, and there's a huge population of kids who have very little motivation to learn within their screen time that we can influence. And then the underlying science behind these things is evolving. So if you look at modern neuroscience, there's a lot of challenge to some of the findings from self-determination or other theories that dislike rewards. When you look at memory formation pathways in the brain, rewards play a huge role there. And if you look at kind of more pragmatic parallels from real life rather than academia, then I play an hour a day of free-to-play games on the mobile phone as research, and rewards work. Like rewards work in games. There's very little reason it wouldn't, and maybe I'll leave it with a small kind of thought bubble is, all of us, how many of us would be in this room if we weren't, employed, getting paid, and to come here? Rewards do work in real life.
That's real. I think when you think about learn to earn, immediately you think about earning some kind of token or crypto. Eamonn, you talked about this a little bit earlier about the resume that can go with students on chain. How are you guys thinking about credentials in your platform for your learners?
Yeah, I think it's really important, and shout outs to Continuum. Jamey is doing work in the inner city schools they're launching NFTs with kids right now, where they're learning through problem-based learning. So a lot of people think like NFTs, oh my gosh, this is some JPEG type of thing, where when we think about Web3, and I don't know how many people are really familiar, but Web 1, Web 2, Web 3, it's the history of the internet, essentially, right? And when you think about K-12 schools, we talk about the history of, econ, we have to talk about the history of the Roman Empire. Well, now we're in a phase where we need to talk about the history of the internet, how it originated, where it was at, and now where we're going, right? And I think it's important for what our kids are doing, problem-based learning. So the first thing we had to bring kids to talk about is, let's identify a problem that is in our community, or globally in our world. Cool, we identified a problem. Next is, let's now identify a product that solved that problem, right? And then now let's identify art that is a symbol of that product and that problem and build community around it, right? And then now this NFT launch is something that is a symbolic way of saying that, hey, we're going to own this on chain and build community around it, and you're going to have ownership. The major difference is the shift of ownership on chain. So now when we think about now they can earn tokens from completing that task or completing that quest, it's no different than, I want to also take it to the corporate world. There's learn to earn for corporations that say, hey, I'm going to pay for you to go back and get that degree. I'm going to pay for you to go back and get that master's. I'm going to pay for you to go and learn. That's learn to earn. But you know the major difference is? When you're fired from that company, you don't take none of that with you, right? You don't get none of that with you. Where ideally, you can get this on chain, right? And this is now proof of learn for employers globally, right? And I think what's really important, if we're talking about access to a permissionless technology, we have to think about equity as the redistribution of access and resources to those who most need it, right? Really think about that. So if we're thinking about access in the future of education, we have to think about how do we redistribute those opportunities. Let's compete, and let's compete where everybody is starting at the same informational stage, right? So that's where we're thinking about how do we really form great competition, but how do we compete in a way and give kids this opportunity to compete with their peers that's not just by their zip code. For example, Georgia just passed an assembly bill that will allow crypto education in their schools. But what schools, right? So now we have to think about that. So now we have to see, will we just go to Web3? The last thing we want is to have Web3 just be Web2 on chain, right? Now we highlight more disparities and we do more disservice to kids. So I think it's really important, not only for kids, but if you're an employer, if you're a startup, how are you thinking about community? Because right now, those who best build community will be set to have high profits in the future. And I think that's what's important.
Sheila, how will the Metacrafters earn credentials?
As I mentioned, NFT, not everybody, it's a non-fungible token. So it's on-chain proof of learn, that's the name of the company, that you have a proof of learn NFT that shows that you completed a course and you pass a certain level of assessment. On top of that, our learn to earn model, we're designing a 2-token fungible token system. And the fungible token is tradable and can actually turn into cash or fiat, we call it, or into other cryptocurrency. And the way to do that is that we've designed a stable coin so that forever it's, we hope, it's assuming it's stable, Jeremy Laren's circle, hopefully USDC, that it stays stable in a sense that it's pegged to the dollar and that then it can be affordable and it stays stable. That's our utility token in the game so that it's always affordable in a learn to earn model. Separate from that, there is what we call the craft or the governance token that allows the community to actually own and earn craft as they're going through the game world so that they partake in the ownership and the growth of this world. The reason it's called Metacrafters is that we're asking and teaching developers to be crafters of meta, to build it together, own it together so that you have pride. Sort of like when you're graduating from university and you're wearing your sweatshirt like a proud alumni. Again, we're playing with the importance of psychology and behavior change to actually focus on getting better completion rates, getting outcomes. And so we're trying to do that in sort of a modern way. And so you and I were talking earlier. I think that there's this myth that you hear crypto and you immediately think coin. And you immediately think unregulated, underhanded ways of trading. There's really bad people doing crypto. If we really peel it away, I often describe it to people, it's really twofold. It's blockchain technology that's creating transparency and meritocracy and a sense of authenticity in the space. It's technology, it's the software, rather than a centralized group of people making decisions. You're outsourcing it to the software. That's blockchain. Web3 is about community, and it is about shared ownership and global access. So if you're here as an educator, and you're here at this conference because you believe that everybody should have access to the future equally, that is Web3. That is the dream of Web3. So if you break it out into those kinds of philosophical, cultural ways of thinking about things, you'll be up here with us next year, thinking that it's not just about a coin. That's not, if you're focused on that and you hear crypto and you're just avoiding it, it's here and now, and it's really about transparency, meritocracy, and community.
Can I add real quick? It's a culture shift. It's a culture shift. If you're a business owner right now, the culture shift is how are you providing ownership and value add to your consumers, but also your employees? Not just when it comes to shared, shares, but when it comes to actually building community that's meaningful and a value add. We was on a podcast earlier. Crypto, when you hear it, most people just think of currency. It's a culture, it's a community, it's a technology that provides access. Right? And I think that's really important when you look at it from that lens.
Let's dive a little deeper into tokenomics and some concerns there. There's issues in an adjacent space, play to earn, is that as popularity grows for top games like Axie Infinity, the token appreciates in cost and value, which limits access for more vulnerable populations. How do you anticipate mitigating the issue so your product doesn't scale to become another highly priced, inaccessible learning community?
I guess I can start with that. So our community is very global, some of which in emerging economies are also even working with some of Eamonn's kids, 15, 16, just starting their careers. So the way that we designed our tokenomics was that you never actually have to buy a Continuum token to participate in the economy, and you can get Continuum's tokens 100% just by earning them through either quizzes or engaging in discussions or maybe participating in different events. So I think that's been really core to our mission of democratizing and giving everyone access, not having to buy them. And then, like I mentioned before, the way that we kind of subsidize that is by tapping into like these corporations and these brands that their incentives are aligned, but they also have the money to kind of like throw at this kind of stuff. So.
Well, I think it's important when you think of any learn to earn, or when you think of tokenomics, is to provide that community access to contribute and to earn tokens, right? And to contribute in different ways so they can be part of the ecosystem. Specifically for K-12 students, or if you're, I think it's important for us to solve several different problems. One is the pathway for them to learn, but more importantly is throughout the history of education, for the most part, we have always preached college, then career. Like if you go to it's college and then career. We have a $1.7 trillion student loan debt crisis, right? It's projected to hit $2 trillion in several years, right? And we think about how the inflation in higher ed is going, we have to think about how do we create tokenomics that is a value add for people to continue their learning, right? And it's not kind of gatekeep from networks. So I always say experience for a community is that iron sharpens iron. Well, a lot of kids that come from underserved communities, they need a network to sharpen their skills. If we don't provide a positive network, then there's negative influences that are triggering them. I ask any of you right now, just internally, think about, why did you do well in school? Most of you guys probably have an external factor. I didn't want to let my parents down. I just felt like I wanted to do, sports or these other external factors. There's very rare you get that person. I just love learning, right? But learning what, right? There's something that is like you love to learn more than something else, right? So I think it's important for us to find a token, and you're going to see innovation with dual token models. Right, you're going to see innovation with NFTs, with underlying technology that allows accessibility. So I think it's important that the innovation still creates accessibility for those who may not have one ETH to get in.
Will you guys talk about your staking concept on your tokenomics?
So I think it's important for us to understand within the culture of crypto, there's decentralized finance, DeFi, right? And decentralized finance, you can allow someone to purchase an NFT or a token and stake, right? And then they can stake and earn a yield, or they can earn a percentage. But when they sell, if they have a selling and they sell, a percentage of that, similar to like if you transact with Venmo or PayPal, they take a small operation fee. Well, think about now that transaction fee going into a student treasury, our business treasury, our DAO, our community treasury. A DAO is a decentralized autonomous organization where you build treasuries to be used to pay out for social impact or to grow the business or to incentivize your community. So when you're thinking about decentralized finance, it's a way for us all to participate in a project or into a platform that allows for the money that's transacted to be used for good or to be used to incentivize the learners in that community.
Yeah, the access piece is what really excites me about the learn to earn space. I really think that employers or even schools should help to subsidize learning for students, which is why I like Proof of Learn and Continuum, partnering with brands and employers who are interested in that talent that you guys are helping to upskill and foster, and will help to subsidize their learning and take on more of that cost to access that talent. So I guess just moving on, how do we create pathways to expose and onboard students to future jobs and earning opportunities in Web3?
I think it's very meta, and it's through education. So I think a lot of like Web3 companies are going to have their own sort of like ecosystem for like Web3 resources. Like we're starting to develop that as well. So I think we're all going to have to contribute as a community to onboarding people, and then maybe eventually certain platforms, like one of us on this panel, might be the Web3 education onboarding platform. But I think right now we all have to kind of pitch in and do it specifically for like our individual communities. So the way that I might explain Web3 to a young graphic designer is different than how Sheila is going to explain it to someone who's been a developer for like 20 years, et cetera.
I think the onboarding, improving the user experience is a tactical one. I think what has to happen is this really huge effort on inclusion. Because what I'm finding going into this space, it's still predominantly men in the space. And it's not actually designed that they wanted to be exclusive. It's that they were a bunch of engineers who were trying to solve the problem of blockchain for that transparency that they really were going after. And so it started to create a club of supporting each other to proselytize blockchain and crypto technology. And so it appeared in whole language and acronyms and difficulty. I often describe it to my girlfriends who are trying to get into crypto. I said, do you guys remember the 80s? I'm dating myself. The 80s in finance and Wall Street. And do you remember all the like language? It was just hard to get in. And it was just, you know, it created a club around it. So we all owe it to ourselves to break it down. And so part of the role and why I'm coming out of retirement and doing another company is like, how do you break in? I've gone from Web 1, broke into Web 2. I'm trying to break into Web 3. How do you just make this language accessible to all, understandable to all? How do you explain the value of it to all? Because it's powerful and it can help a lot of people. So I think it's not just the onboarding tactical experience. I think it's the spirit of inclusion that we really have to push through. I love what's happening with creators. I love what's happening through K through 12, what's happening in the inner cities, in the underserved communities. We just have developing countries that we're targeting. Unless you're designing for all, which many of you are here, I keep harping on that. This is why like coming to a conference like this matters. It's because you believe in that. And that is the power of the kinds of things that we're doing up here.
Yeah, you know, I always say like, you know, kids coming from where I come from, but let's make no doubt about it. It's a kid in rural Kentucky that's struggling through several problems as the kid in Watts. And I think really important is that in the space right now, it's so new that the user experience is horrible, right? It's like, yo, I gotta do this, do that, do this, do this, do this, do that, and then you're like, wait, what's going on? So right now it's about, one is how, if you're a designer, it's like creating a user experience, UI, UX. Next is, how do we bridge communities? If you're a community builder, then that's going to be the pivot for the future, right? If your company is not great at building community and you're just looking at profit margins, then you're going to struggle in the next 10 years, right? So we got to build that. Next is what I'm excited for with K-12 is the key to onboarding the masses is through kids. Go look at the top grossing movies. Most of them are kid movies. Why? It's because the kids go and guess who have to go with them? Their parents, right? Like right now, my son is 10 months. He loves Vivo on Netflix. I don't care about Vivo, but I'm watching Vivo singing along with him, right? And I think what's important is as we start learning, when kids start learning about crypto, guess what? I don't care about Robux, but my daughter loves Robux, and I gotta buy them, right? Now V-Bucks on all these different gaming and learning, but when you find value and that happens, then now you have a generation that's cross-generational, that is onboarded, and it's going to happen like this. One day you're going to get on, and it's going to say, connect your wallet. You know how you sign onto an app and it says, connect your Gmail? One day it's going to say, connect your wallet, and you'll be like, I don't have a wallet. What do I do? And by that moment, if you were a business person, it's too late. So just really understand that.
Well, thank you guys. I know you guys are all interested in increasing outcomes for learners. If anyone wants to connect with the panelists, can take it outside. And just thank you for joining us today to learn about the Learn to Earn space.